The Oscar goes to 20 Days in Mariupol.
Ukrainian forces have now launched
I
their
want
much talked
it
about
to be as realistic as possible, and the audience to experience everything that the soldiers experience.
I wanted to start off with a bit of a philosophical question based on the title of your latest documentary, 2000 Meters to Andriivka. If we think about 2000 meters in terms of length, it doesn't take a long time to traverse. But as you note in the film, distance and time take on different meanings during wartime. So I wanted to start off by asking you how, as a reporter during wartime, have your notions of time, danger, and even memory changed?
Wow, that is a good philosophical question. Yeah. I think what I can say is that I'm looking for stories that are symbolic, and the story becomes symbolic when you really zoom in, when you have a limit of your vision, when you are getting inside the story and close to it, as close to it as possible. And so the distance, the days, having the story happening in the same location, this was all something that I'm looking for to tell these stories. But it's just something that I always feel when I am in a war zone. I've been through many wars, more than I should have, and every time you are there, whether it's your country, especially when it's your country, but also when you are somewhere else in the world, you always feel trapped. That feeling of being trapped in a war, that feeling of being trapped in someone's violence, and in the cycles of violence that seem unstoppable, like it is with Russia invasion in Ukraine. Ukrainians didn't start it, but it's just we're stuck in someone else's violence. And so it does change your concept of time. It does change your concept of space, because everything pressures you, everything traps you in this violence, in these spaces, in these basements. We're all waiting for hours and hours and hours to missile to pass, or to strike somewhere near our house, in the trenches where we wait for the drone to pass, or artillery strike to finish. War very often becomes waiting, and while you wait, you have time to think about time. You can think about human nature, about violence. And in many ways, this film, 2000 Meters to Andriivka, is that research, is that questioning of those spaces, of the time we spend in a war, and of us being trapped in a war. And if you look at the story of 2000 Meters, it couldn't be simpler. It is 2000 meters, 1 mile of land, of a very small forest squeezed between two minefields that our protagonists need to traverse to get to the village and to raise the flag. It's a very simple story, but while that story unfolds in that very small space, and that 3 months that it took them to get to the village, you feel you know about the war much more, and you see it in a very different way than you did before, and you know more about time and about people that are right next to you.
Thank you for that answer. It was so lovely to hear your perspective on this.
You got philosophical, I got philosophical. So
Yeah, definitely. In both 2000 Meters to Andriivka and in 20 Days for Mariupol, you are portraying people on screen who, in many cases, unfortunately, are killed later on by Russia. As journalists, we try, to maintain some distance with our subject, but at the end of the day, we're only human. Of course, we will feel this sense of loss when we learn people that we've met are killed. So how do you, as a journalist, who is so often, as you said yourself, in combat zones, how are you dealing with this sense of loss when you document people's stories?
I think the whole premise is not to keep the distance, not to keep the emotional distance, because human tragedy and tragedy of these men in 2,000 meters who lost their lives fighting to liberate the land they call home and I call home, and tragedy of civilians in Mariupol who were trapped there and killed by Russian bombs, in all those stories, we don't want to keep the distance. I don't want to keep the distance. In fact, to respect their pain, to respect their loss, to respect their sacrifice, I want to feel what they feel as much as I can. And I want to be with them when they live through this terrible moments, to be able to adequately and ethically speak about their experience. Both 2,000 meters and 20 days are narrated from the first person. It is my narration, it's my perspective, although it is not a story about me, but I still feel that I'm speaking at least partially from not only for myself, but for the community I live in, whether that's a Ukrainian community or a community of people who are at the front line. So if we are to speak in their name and try to make everything possible to keep the memory and an honor, then we have to live through these moments. And the danger I'm in when I'm making these stories, the nature my colleagues in, is substantial, but it's so much less, of course, than the danger that the soldiers are putting themselves in every day. But yet we still have to be close. That distance has to be as little as possible. And this is the film about distance. This is a film about trying to make the distance, emotional, physical distance, shorter between the Ukrainian society and these men on the front line who are fighting for our homes and families, between the Western society and the Ukrainians who are, in fact, defending a front line of Europe from Russian invasion. And so that's why this is film about distances. And that's the reason why I want it to be as realistic as possible and the audience to experience everything that the soldiers experience. And that's why I want emotion to be raw. I don't want to pull back. And it is definitely very painful, especially when you lose people who became your friends. But this is the only way we can tell these stories.
Mm-hmm. Would you say closing that emotional distance was the main reason so much helmet cam footage was used in 2,000 meters to Andriivka, because it created such this sense of claustrophobia and fully immerses the viewer in the violence of the front line? To be honest with you, watching the first 10-15 minutes, I had to pause. I felt myself having a panic attack. Just like that I was, no, of course you can't relive what they lived through. But I felt so emotionally in it, I had to take a moment and step back. It was really, I think, if we talk about distance, it's absolutely what you did. You closed this distance between the viewer and the soldiers.
Helmet cameras, they really, really help to do that. They really help to get that raw experience directly to the audience. It's even to the audience that's seemingly not that interested in Ukraine or why this invasion is happening and what's happening to Ukrainians. That's what I wanted to do. Even for people who are far from all the context, they would still feel related and they would still feel this raw experience that the soldiers are going through. That introduces the challenge of of crossing the line too much, because this medium of body cam footage is quite dangerous in a way that for the people who are not connected, for the people who see the social networks and the things and the videos that they see in social networks, or who go to the cinema and don't know anything, there's a danger for them to detach emotionally and see it as a game. And that's why being so strong, that medium is not enough. It requires a very careful craft to keep the balance between the engagement and detachment, between being emotional and also understanding that this is something very real, and this really happening. It's not just a lot of noise on the screen. And I think Michelle Meissner, the editor, amazing editor behind 20 Days in Mariupol and 2,000 Meters to Andriivka, made it possible. She crafted that narrative using conversations with soldiers, we used music, we used other mediums to intercut with body cam footage to craft this immersive narrative that at the same time doesn't feel like a game.
We hear how the war in Ukraine is the most documented war in history. Some of these most iconic images came from the work you and your colleagues did. Is there anything, there's this fear of inundation of horrific images, and what to do with this? Is there anything specific that you would like, not just Ukrainians, but Western audiences, the whole world, to take from the work that you specifically are documenting?
I think good work of art, and I hope, besides being a historical record, the films I do also are works of art, because that's the power of cinema. That's when cinema goes beyond just documenting and becomes universal and shows experience not only of Ukrainian soldiers, but also of the soldiers on the front lines 100 years ago. And unfortunately, that is probably what's going to be happening 100 years after. So something universal, something symbolic. But I don't think that detachment of and fatigue, if that's what you feel what is happening, is, and I feel that too, is connected to the fact that people saw just too many Ukrainian films, for example, or they are tired of violence. We as humans experience violence through the entirety of our history. And we see violence everywhere, all the time, whether that's cinema or news. So I think that's not what pushes people away. What pushes people away is radical imperatives that the world is full of right now. Everyone is trying to convince everyone of something. Opinions are radicalized. So when people go to cinema or they open their laptop and they see another Ukrainian film, whether that's a film from battlefield or from about a civilian population, they distance themselves because they think they will be convinced of something. And they're tired of that. So if we make this experience universal, if it's more than just some moralizing statement, if it's a question, and I feel that films I'm trying to make are questions rather than answers, then the audience will connect. And everyone will carry something they feel or they think out of the cinema. for me, this film is about, first and foremost, it's about memory. It's about remembering the people who gave their lives for something that is just more than a village or a flag. They give their lives for a hope for the nation, for a symbol of victory that, thanks to which everyone is still holding together and still resisting. And my hometown is still not occupied, and so many other cities are still there, not under Russian occupation. So this film for me is also a flag that I carry for them. And that's it. If it is just that, that's enough. If their families will know that the sacrifices of their loved ones will not be forgotten, will not disappear in the noise of media, in this black hole of information space, if they know it, then I am happy and it was all worth it. But if international audiences carry something out of it, if they come out with a question that makes them more engaged and understand better the experience of Ukrainian soldiers, that's great. I'm happy about that too.
Thank you for watching this video. If you like our content, go to thekyivindependent.com and become a member today.